The banners of conquest snapped in the wind, casting shadows across the great war court of the alien empire. Thousands of warriors stood assembled on the blood-soaked stone, their armor glinting in the crimson sunlight of a foreign sky. Above them, seated upon a throne of steel carved from the wreckage of fallen fleets, towered the Alien Warlord. He was a titan, clad in jagged plates of black iron, his tusked face twisted into a grin of cruelty. His voice, amplified by the living walls of the fortress, thundered over the gathered ranks. "Another world has fallen," he roared, raising his massive works to the sky. "Earth, a planet of insects who hid behind their machines, who believed their fragile shells of steel could withstand us. They are finished, their armies burned, their cities ash, and what did they prove in the end?" He paused, his yellow eyes sweeping the assembly, his grin widening. "That they are cowards." The army roared in approval, pounding their weapons against their shields, their cheers echoing like thunder. Priests of war howled praises, nobles sneered from their balconies. The warlord basked in their worship, his voice rising even louder. "Humans, for all their numbers, for all their noise, are nothing but frightened animals. They cower behind their weapons because without them they are weak. Without them they are nothing." The crowd erupted again. The warlord slammed the butt of his axe into the ground, and with a gesture ordered his guards forward. "Bring me their proof. Bring me the last of their kind." From the shadows of the gate, 2 armored soldiers emerged, dragging a figure bound in chains. The crowd jeered as the prisoner stumbled into the light. It was a human, bruised, bloodied, stripped of his armor. He looked like a shadow of a soldier. His uniform was torn, his hands bound in heavy shackles, his face streaked with dirt and blood. Yet, as the warlord leaned forward to savor his humiliation, the human did something unexpected. He lifted his head, his eyes locked on the throne con, steady, unbroken. The jeers faltered. The crowd had expected fear, groveling, begging. Instead, they saw fire. The warlord narrowed his eyes, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Do you hear me, human?" he bellowed. "Your world is dust. Your armies are gone. You are the last ember of a dying fire, and I will snuff you out like all the rest. Do you understand? Without your weapons, you are nothing." The human's lips twitched not into a grimace of fear, but into something dangerously close to a smile. "I understand one thing," he said, his voice rough but steady, carrying across the silent court. "You're afraid of what happens when we don't have weapons, because then all that's left is us." The hall went still. The crowd shifted uneasily. The priests muttered, uncertain. Even the soldiers in their gleaming armor exchanged glances. The warlord rose from his throne, his tusks bared, his laughter booming to cover the tremor of unease in his chest. "Arrogant till the end. Then let us show the galaxy what a human is without his machines." He raised his axe high, pointing it toward the arena gates. "Tomorrow, this coward will face death as he truly is unarmed. Let the galaxy see the weakness of men with their bare hands, and let his death be the final proof that humans were never worthy of the stars." The court exploded in cheers, their voices deafening. But beneath the roar, whispers still lingered, whispers of the way the human had looked at the warlord, whispers of his smile, whispers of a man who had nothing left except something that could not be chained. The guards pulled him away, chains clattering across the stone. But even as he was dragged toward the darkness of his cell, his eyes never left the throne, and in those eyes burned the promise of something the warlord could not silence, not cowardice, not fear, but defiance. The next day dawned with blood in the sky. Twin suns rose over the empire's capital, staining the horizon crimson, as if the heavens themselves anticipated slaughter. The streets overflowed with citizens, nobles, soldiers, and priests, all marching toward the colossal arena carved into the bones of a mountain. Drums thundered in rhythm with their chants, the air vibrating with anticipation. Today was not just another spectacle. Today was proof of the warlord's words, proof that humans were cowards, fragile, unworthy of the stars. The arena itself was a monster of stone and steel. Its walls towered like cliffs, scarred from centuries of battle. Banners of conquest fluttered from jagged spires, each marking a world subjugated and broken. Within, the ground was black and scarred. A graveyard of countless warriors who had fallen to the Empire's games dotted the highest balcony. Beneath a canopy of firecloth and shadow sat the warlord. His tusked grin gleamed in the morning light as he raised his arms, silencing the roars of the crowd. "Today," he thundered, his voice booming across the Colosseum, "you will see with your own eyes what I have told you. Humanity is nothing. They are cowards, hiding behind weapons and machines. Strip away their tools, and they are weak, fragile, laughable." The crowd roared in agreement, their chants shaking the stone. "Weak, weak, weak." The gates at the far end of the arena groaned open. 2 guards emerged, dragging the human soldier into the light. His chains clinked with every step. His clothes hung in tatters, his skin streaked with dried blood. Yet still, his back was straight, his gaze steady. Tens of thousands of eyes bore into him, but he did not falter. He walked into the heart of the Empire's spectacle as if he were not a prisoner, but a challenger. The warlord leaned forward, his grin widening. Behold, the last ember of earth, and watch now, as even that ember is crushed. He raised his axe toward the gates opposite the human. Release the champions. The gates split open with a roar of gears, and from the shadows, 3 alien warriors emerged. They were giants, clad in black steel armor, armed with jagged blades longer than the human's body. Their tusked faces twisted into cruel grins, their eyes glowing with hunger for blood. The crowd erupted in cheers. Bets were shouted. Laughter filled the air. The human stood unarmed, his chains now unbound, and dropped to the ground, leaving only his bare hands. He flexed his fingers once, the faintest smile twitching at his lips. The first champion charged. The ground shook beneath his armored boots, his blade swinging down with the weight of a mountain. The human moved not fast, not strong, but precise. He sidestepped at the last instant, the blade cleaving into stone where he had stood. With a grunt, he slammed his shoulder into the warrior's side, unbalancing him just long enough to wrench the blade free. The crowd gasped as the human used the warrior's own momentum against him, sending the giant crashing to the dirt. The second champion advanced with a roar, blade cutting in a wide arc. The human dove under it, the steel grazing his back, tearing flesh, but he ignored the pain. He rolled to his feet, scooping up sand and hurling it into the warrior's eyes. Blinded, the alien stumbled, and the human leapt, driving his fist into the creature's throat. The impact wasn't enough to kill, but it was enough to stagger, enough to prove he was not afraid. The third champion swung from behind, his blade slashing across the human's ribs. Blood sprayed. The crowd roared. The warlord laughed, but the human did not fall. He staggered, yes, his body shook, but he planted his feet firmly in the dirt, raised his head, and stared straight at the balcony. Straight at the warlord. The crowd fell uneasy. He was unarmed, bleeding, alone, and still. He stood. The first champion rose again, enraged. The 3 circled him, blades gleaming. Together, they closed in. The human lowered his stance, his breath ragged, his fists clenched. He did not move to run. He did not raise his hands in surrender. He stood, ready. They came at once. The arena exploded in chaos. Blades slashed, fists struck, bodies collided. Dust and blood filled the air. The crowd leaned forward, screaming, gasping, some in awe, some in fury. Again and again, the human was struck down. Again and again, he rose, a blade cut across his shoulder. He staggered, but stood. A fist slammed into his chest. He coughed blood, but stood. A boot drove him into the dirt. He spat blood into the sand, and stood. The crowd's laughter faltered. Whispers rippled. How does he keep rising? Finally, in a desperate surge, the human caught one champion's blade in both hands. The steel tore his palms, blood running down his arms, but he twisted, wrenching it free. With a roar, he turned their own weapon against them, driving it through the first champion's chest. The warrior fell. The crowd gasped. The second came in rage, swinging wildly. The human ducked low, slamming the blade upward, tearing through the warrior's armor. The second fell. Only one remained. He swung with fury, his blade crashing into the human's side, dropping him to his knees. The crowd roared with triumph. The warlord bared his teeth in victory, but slowly, so slowly, the human pushed himself up again. Blood streamed down his body, his breath ragged, his legs shaking. Still he rose. The last champion hesitated. Just for a moment, that was all the human needed. With a roar that shook the silence, he lunged, driving the stolen blade straight through the warrior's chest. The arena went still. 3 armored champions lay dead at his feet, and the human stood, bloodied, broken, unarmed, save for the blade he had stolen, staring up at the throne with fire in his eyes. The warlord's grin faltered. His hands tightened on his axe. For the first time in his reign, he felt the whisper of something he had never known before: doubt. The arena floor was a graveyard of giants. 3 armored champions lay broken in the dirt, their jagged blades shattered, their bodies sprawled lifeless beneath the gaze of thousands. And yet, the human still stood. His chest heaved like a furnace. Blood ran down his arms in crimson rivers, and his knees trembled under the weight of wounds that should have killed him long ago, but he did not fall. The crowd, once a storm of laughter and jeers, had fallen into stunned silence. Tens of thousands stared, their voices caught in their throats. Nobles leaned forward from their balconies, their jeweled faces pale with disbelief. Soldiers in the stands shifted uneasily, their fists tight on their weapons. Even the priests, who had been chanting hymns of conquest, now whispered prayers they no longer believed. And above them all, on his throne of steel and fire, the warlord's grin had withered into something darker. His tusked face twisted with rage, but in his chest, a colder feeling had begun to take root, one he refused to name. He rose to his feet, his voice cracking like thunder. Enough, he roared. This is no proof of strength. This is luck. Tricks, nothing more. He pointed a clawed hand at the human, his voice booming. You call this courage? You are still nothing but a coward, hiding behind desperation. Where is your strength now? Where is your courage now? The human staggered. His body swayed like a tree battered by storms. His breath rattled. Blood dripped onto the black stone floor, soaking the dirt beneath him. For a moment, it seemed he would collapse at last, but then he lifted his head, and when he spoke, his voice, though cracked and ragged, carried across the arena with a clarity that silenced even the warlord's fury. "Courage isn't in the weapon," he said slowly, his words heavy as iron. "It's in the one who holds it." The silence deepened. His words echoed against the walls, sank into the bones of every soul who heard them. Soldiers froze nobles exchanged glances of unease. The priests fell quiet. The human's chest rose and fell. Every inhale a war, every exhale a victory. He spat blood onto the dirt and fixed his gaze on the warlord's throne. "You think courage is a blade," he continued, his voice growing stronger with every word. "You think it is armor, numbers, power, but courage is standing when you should fall. Courage is rising when the world tries to break you. Courage is fighting, even when you know you will die." The crowd shifted, whispers spreading like wildfire. "He's unarmed, yet he fights. He should be dead, but he still rises." The warlord slammed his axe into the balcony rail, sparks flying. "Lies, you are dying where you stand. What is this but weakness?" The human's lips curled into a faint, bloody smile. He raised his trembling arms, empty hands outstretched, scars glowing red in the arena's light. "This is what you'll never understand," he said, his voice fierce now, thunderous despite its hoarseness. "You can strip us of our weapons. You can chain our bodies. You can burn our worlds. But you will never kill what makes us human." He took a step forward, then another. His legs shook, but still he walked, leaving a trail of blood behind him. "Yet never bowing, we don't kneel. Another step, we don't beg. Another, we don't break." His voice rose to a roar, the crowd leaning forward in awe. "We endure." The words hit the arena like a hammer strike. The silence shattered not into laughter, not into cheers, but into stunned disbelief. Soldiers stared wide-eyed, nobles whispered furiously, priests shook with fear. Even the warlord flinched, his tusked mouth twisting, his grip tightening on his axe. For in those 4 words, the human had destroyed his lie. He was not a coward, he was not weak, he was not broken, he was courage itself. The warlord bellowed in fury, trying to drown the whispers with his roar. Kill him now. But none of his soldiers moved, not one. Their hands trembled on their weapons, their eyes locked on the human who stood unarmed, drenched in blood, and still refused to fall. And in that moment, in the heart of the Empire's greatest arena, before the eyes of thousands, the warlord realized the most terrifying truth of all. He had not broken the human had broken him. The arena smelled of iron and ash. Blood pooled in black rivers, soaking into the cracks of the stone floor where countless warriors had once fallen. But today was different. Today, the blood belonged to a single man, a human. And still, he stood. The silence of the crowd was louder than thunder. Tens of thousands of voices had been reduced to whispers, and whispers to nothing. Soldiers who once roared chants of conquest now gripped their spears with trembling hands. Nobles who sneered at humanity now avoided each other's eyes. The priests of war, whose chants once shook mountains, were silent, and on his throne above them all, the alien warlord seethed. This was supposed to have been simple, a spectacle, a lesson, a final humiliation for a race he had declared cowardly and weak. But instead of crumbling under the weight of his empire's power, the human had risen again and again, until even death seemed powerless to claim him. And now, the crowd, the very heart of the empire, was no longer laughing. They were no longer cheering, they were watching him. The warlord's tusked jaw tightened, his tusks grinding against each other like stone on stone. His grip tightened on his warrix until the steel groaned. And then, with a roar that shook the very air, he rose. "Enough," he thundered, his voice echoing across the Colosseum. "This charade ends now." He leaped from his throne, landing in the arena with a crash that sent cracks splintering through the black stone. Dust and sparks burst outward as the crowd gasped. The warlord towered over the human, his armor black as night, his axe gleaming like a shard of a dying sun. The ground itself seemed to quake beneath him. He pointed the massive blade at the human. "You wanted courage." His voice dripped with venom. "Then face me, face the Empire, and die." The human's chest rose and fell, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. His body was failing. His skin was pale, his arms heavy, his vision clouded. And yet, he lifted his head, his gaze steady, his lips curling into the faintest smile. "I don't need to win," he said softly, his voice ragged but steady enough to echo. "I only need to stand." The crowd shifted. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Nobles froze, their whispers caught in their throats. The warlord snarled, enraged by the silence of his own people. With a roar, he charged. The axe swung downward, a mountain of steel and fury. The human dove aside, barely, the blade smashing into stone, sending shards flying like knives. Dust filled the air, but the human coughed, staggered, and rose again. The warlord swung again, faster this time, his fury lending him speed. The axe clipped the human's shoulder, tearing flesh, sending blood spraying across the arena floor. The crowd gasped, but the human did not fall. He stumbled, he swayed. But he stood. The warlord roared louder, his tusks gleaming, his eyes burning. He struck again and again, each blow tearing deeper into the human's already broken body. Blood splattered across the arena, across the warlord's armor, across the very banners of conquest that hung above. And still, the human rose. Every time the crowd thought he would not, he did. Every time the warlord thought he had finally broken him, he had not. And with every rise, the silence of the crowd deepened into something more dangerous than it became belief. The warlord felt it. He felt it like a knife twisting in his chest. His empire's people were no longer looking at him. They were looking at the human, at his courage, at his defiance. No. The warlord bellowed, his voice cracking under the weight of fury and fear. Look at me. I am your conqueror. I am your strength. He is nothing. Nothing. That human spat blood into the dirt. His voice, weak but unyielding, carried across the silence. Then why are you afraid? The word struck like lightning. The warlord froze, his grip faltering on the axe. The crowd gasped. The human staggered forward, step by agonizing step, leaving a trail of crimson behind him. He raised his empty hands, broken and bleeding, and spread them wide. You called us cowards, he rasped. You said we hide behind weapons. But here I stand, unarmed, broken, dying, and still. I face you. The crowd shifted, their whispers now audible. Soldiers lowered their spears. Nobles leaned forward. Priests bowed their heads. The human took another step, then another. His knees shook, but he did not fall. His eyes blazed brighter than any weapon. You wanted the galaxy to see our weakness, he said. His voice was ragged, yet it carried across the Colosseum like thunder. Instead, they see our strength. They see that courage does not die when the body breaks. They see that even when all else is taken, our will endures. The warlord roared, desperate to drown him out. With a final cry, he swung his axe in a killing arc. Straight at the human's chest, the blade struck. Blood exploded across the stone. The human staggered, the steel cutting deep, his body collapsing to his knees. The crowd cried out in shock. The warlord laughed, raising his axe high in victory. But then the human rose again. Slowly, painfully, against all reason, against all logic, against the very laws of flesh and blood. He pushed himself back to his feet. His body trembled, his chest heaved, his vision blurred, but his eyes were fire. And as the crowd watched, as the warlord froze, as the empire itself held its breath, the human raised his head and whispered the words that would echo across the stars for centuries. We don't kneel, we don't beg, we don't break, we endure.